What happened? The Liberals were going to lose the election. It was a done deal. The polls were all showing for at least 2 years that the Liberals were at the lowest levels they'd ever been, and Polyev seemed to be a shoe-in to win. So, how come, obviously, all of the people who said they regret voting for Trudeau, that it was a mistake, are all now eager to vote for his replacement? They're all eager to vote for the Liberals again, the same party that they refused to vote for up until a couple of months ago. What's going on? Here is what's going on. Here are four reasons why people who said they regret voting for Trudeau will vote for Carney. Reason number one, they blame Trudeau for their mistake. Instead of concluding there is something wrong with my judgment that I need to identify and fix, they blame Trudeau for not fulfilling their expectations. With Trudeau gone, they think the problem is solved. This means they will make the same mistake again and again. Justin Trudeau is the guy who responded to the question, what other country do you admire most, by saying China, communist China, because of their basic dictatorship. That alone, in any other era, up until the era of Justin Trudeau, would have been sufficient to have you dismissed as some kind of absurd loon who shouldn't be anywhere near the position of prime minister or any other elected office. But millions of Canadians decided to vote for him anyway. And now, years later, they were saying that they regret it. The polls showed that they regretted it, that it was a mistake. And instead of looking at themselves and asking, how come all of these other people at the time could see exactly who Trudeau was and what a disaster this would be, and were saying so, how come they could see it and I couldn't see it? What am I doing wrong? Because I've got to figure that out so I'm make sure I don't make the same mistake in this election with Carney and the same Liberal Party. But instead of doing that, they blame Trudeau. They blame Trudeau for not living up to their fantasy of how excellent a prime minister and a human being they wanted to believe he was, right? It's his fault for not being who they fantasized he was. And now that he's gone, well, that's fine. Now the problem's gone. I can go back to voting Liberal or whatever it is, right? So, it's kind of like the person who has one bad relationship after another, and instead of asking themselves, why am I doing this? Because not everybody's making this mistake. They blame all men or they blame all women, right? It's kind of a similar thing. Number two, they associate voting Liberal with high status and moral righteousness. Their priority is thinking of themselves as among the enlightened, sophisticated class. They've been conditioned for their entire lives to equate voting Liberal left wing with those attributes and voting conservative right wing with the opposite. Their priority isn't how do these things actually play out in the real world. Their priority is how do I generate and sustain a gratifying self-image. I want to think of myself as belonging to the group that are the enlightened, sophisticated, wonderful people. And they associate liberals and the left with having those qualities. If I vote for them, that means I'm enlightened and morally excellent, and that's my priority. Number three, they don't value consistent principles and logic. The political party they support is an extension of their identity and their ego. Anything that interferes with the elevation of the party is a threat to their own idealized self-conception and is devalued. Hypocrisy, reversal of policies, intellectual dishonesty, and ethical breaches are therefore rationalized or ignored. All of these things have to be devalued. It's not that big a deal when my party does it. There's a reason for it. I can justify that, right? Number 4, they are ignorant of or indifferent to critical thinking. Critical thinking is a set of disciplines. If you are never introduced to those disciplines, you will not intuitively develop them on your own. If you have been introduced to them, you have to value truth over the gratification of having your biases affirmed in order to exercise them. So we're at a point in our history where the reasonably intelligent people with lots of university education in high status positions have the exact same opinions about everything as the stupidest fucks you could ever have the misfortune of encountering. And this is because they are prioritizing the same thing, right? So dumb people prioritize conformity to what they perceive to be associated with enlightenment and intellectual sophistication, because they can't do that themselves, right? So I'll identify with those people because I think those people are the smart people, and then I get to claim to be smart and point at other people and go, ha, ha, you're dumber than me. That's what dumb people do. These days, reasonably intelligent, educated people do the same thing. Instead of exercising critical scrutiny of the things that they're endorsing, they're simply going, it is gratifying to me to associate with these policies and these political parties because those are the parties that are associated with enlightenment and sophistication and moral excellence and progressive and all of these things. So reasonably intelligent people who have high status positions in Canada are privileging the same ego gratification that the dumb people are privileging. And that's why they all have the same opinions about everything, right? So instead of the discipline of critical thinking, where you challenge your own assumptions, you challenge the things that are easiest for you to believe, that are most gratifying. Am I believing this and supporting this because it's true, because it makes sense, because it's logical, because there's some consistency to it? Or am I doing this because it just feels good to my sense of self, my ego? It's very gratifying. It's easier for me. All of my peers think this way, so I'm going to go along with that rather than risk making myself a pariah amongst my own peer group, right? So educated, smart people are doing the same thing as stupid people for the same reasons and getting the same results. Those are the 4 reasons that people who said they regretted voting for Trudeau will vote for Carney, right? It's not this thing going around among conservatives that it's boomers are selfish and all. They're thinking about this and they're going, it's my self-interest to try to maintain the status quo because it's done well for my house prices, and I don't care about younger people being screwed over by. That is giving liberal supporters way more credit than they deserve. It's giving them way too much credit for basing their political decisions on reason and informed self-interest. That's not what they're doing. This is entirely about generating a gratifying self-image. And if there's one more reason to add to the list, it's sort of 4.5, or maybe it's more like 2.5, because it sort of associates with that, is that one of the reasons that boomers in particular, and Gen Xers, by the way, who just like copy boomers, and I keep seeing people on Twitter who are Gen Xers who take real umbrage to this being pointed out, but every single Gen Xer that I know, people of my generation, are left-wing liberal or NDP supporters, every single one of them. And they always have been. So what's going on with the boomers? What is going on is that the boomers came of age in the era of shallow love, peace, love, and flowers, 1960s idealism. And at that exact same time is when Pierre Trudeau came on the scene and got the leadership of the Liberal Party. And that idealism, that narcissistic, self-indulgent, we're the enlightened ones, that shallow, hippy-dippy idealism was associated with Pierre Trudeau and the Liberals at that point. And then for the rest of their lives, boomers vote Liberal because it identifies them in their minds as being enlightened and sophisticated and morally excellent. That's why they vote Liberal. It's nothing to do with I care about my house prices and I don't care about millennials or whatever. It's nothing to do with that. It's strictly, and I think this is hard for thinking people to accept, because thinking people assume everyone is basically like themselves. And so if they see boomers or whatever class making political decisions that just seem ludicrous or illogical or self-defeating or uninformed or something, they think, well, they're just not thinking correctly about it. And if I could just reason with them, they would see why it's a mistake. That's not what you're dealing with. You're not dealing with people who are like you. You're dealing with people who prioritize ego gratification. That's all they care about. I know this is hard for some people to believe, because thinking people, kind of mature thinking people, think, well, that's kind of degrading to people. You're kind of like talking down to them. It's like, and I don't want to think of myself as doing that. It can't be that. There must be some other reason. And you're wrong. There's no other reason. You just have to accept what you're actually dealing with. There are lots and lots of Canadians who basically think like adolescents, that they develop to that stage intellectually and emotionally. Their maturity is at that stage, because that stage basically is the stage required to function at a basic level in society. Once you've reached that stage, you can basically function. You can follow the basic rules. You can get a job. You can, have relationships. You can, have babies if at that age. You can. I'm not saying you could be good at any of the things, but you can function at that. Not that long ago, in my parents' generation, leaving school and starting your work life, you did that around 15, 16. That was normal for a lot of people. So that's the requirement, right? Your society kind of demands you get at least to that stage of development. Ideally, you continue from that stage, right? That's the stage that you come to without any effort, right? You're sort of forced to mature to that stage. To go beyond that stage, you have to make an effort, right? You now have to develop the skill sets to try to understand the world in kind of a mature and sophisticated way. You need to develop these character traits, right? Integrity, and understand critical thinking and how reason works, and self-awareness of your own motivations and some flaws you might have in your approach to logic. All of these things, none of that comes spontaneously. That's stuff you need to learn and practice. But we have a culture that no longer encourages that in people. You can seek it out, but it's not necessary. And just going to higher education does not mean that you are being grounded in those traits and those developments of character. Probably very much the opposite. It certainly seems very much the opposite, because it seems that the more education Canadians have, and I'm not saying the better education, but just the more education they have, the more they are conditioned to associate conformity with the hierarchy in which they are embedded with social approval, with status, and with success, right? So you don't graduate through your university education by challenging the orthodoxy of the subject you're studying. You progress by convincing the person upon whom you are dependent for your advancement that you have adopted his way of thinking about this. And that's what higher education conditions people to do, along with, learning about, the rules of accounting or law or whatever it is. But like in a deeper sense, you're conditioned to equate conformity with personal success and with acceptance. And so when you go out into the working world, that is only emphasized. It becomes even more true that the more you make yourself at one with the culture of the company or the institution in which you are dependent for your career, the more you are likely to succeed in advancing your career. And then when it comes to politics, it's just at that point, it's second nature. It's like, well, the institutions and the culture we're in, the hierarchy, at the top of that is the political establishment. So basically your job is to conform to what they say. And that shows how enlightened you are, right? So that's why you had so much hostility from the professional class towards, say, the truckers during the convoy stuff, right? And that's why so much of the commentary and criticism you see on X, for example, from people who associate with the liberals and the left towards conservatives is, we're so much smarter than them. We're so much more enlightened than them. We're better people than those Polyev supporters and those truckers, right? This is the reality of what we're dealing with in Canada. It's not merely differences of opinion anymore. We're way beyond that. It's now about people who actively think about what they're grappling with out there in the world, and people who actively prioritize conformity because it delivers gratification to them, social status, social approval. You get to tell yourself, I'm smart and enlightened because I'm with all the smart and enlightened people, right? That's the priority of Canadians. Not all of them, but a hell of a lot of them. So that trying to reason with them, well, if I just explain it to them this way, it ain't going to work because they don't care. And you see this again and again among Canadians on the left. This is a wonderful thing about X, right? About Twitter, is that you experience the actual thinking of thousands and thousands of people. And you can see these patterns over and over again. And what you see from people on the left is they're comfortable with self-contradiction, they're comfortable with hypocrisy, they're comfortable with misrepresenting things. It's all in aid of self-aggrandizement, right? When self-aggrandizement is the ultimate priority, then what difference does it make whether or not I contradict myself? What difference does it make whether or not I'm inconsistent in my logic? Or if I'm misrepresenting things? The bigger goal is that I'm right. And so that doesn't matter. Nothing else. I'm right. So if I get caught out contradicting myself, it's like, oh, well, so what? I'm still right. You can't reason with people who start and end with, I'm right no matter what. I'm right. And that's what we're dealing with in Canada. And the sooner that the kind of percentage of Canadians who can still think, actively think, come to grips with that's what we're dealing with, then at least we'll be dealing with reality. We will be dealing with what's really going on in our country. I don't think it's going to ultimately help, because I think we're in the minority, people who actively think and critically scrutinize what we're being told and try to hold to principles and try to be consistent. I think we're overwhelmed by the other thing. So I guess that's a bit of a downer to end on, but what are you going to do?
This is going to get ugly.